Hello, and welcome to this Christian Walk podcast, the show where no topic is too taboo to empower you on your walk with God. I'm your host, Marley B., and it is my privilege to welcome you back to the conversation. In today's conversation, we are going to revisit the fundamentals of faith. A lot of times, people stray away from the church because they don't feel like they have built up the appropriate or the acceptable Bible acumen or the Bible practices. We get more into the ritual of things instead of the relationship, right? So, and sometimes they feel shame. They feel people will actually put them down as a result of their lack of knowledge, so to speak. And then on the other side of it, there are people who been going to church their whole life, and they think they have all the fundamentals down, but really they're missing the mark. We're just riding the wave that our parents taught us, that our grandparents taught us, or that we learned just from always being in the church, looking around, being in the ritual of things once again, but not really there in relationship with God. And if we're not in relationship, we are missing the entire thing. But this isn't about whether you know or whether you don't know. This is about being real or just acknowledging wherever you are. And no matter where you are, not allowing wherever level you're on at this point in time to keep you out of the church and more than anything, out of relationship with God. I invited two ladies on the show today. One you've seen before, one you'll be seeing from the first time, who are going to join me in this conversation about what it's like grasping the fundamentals and what it can be like sometimes when you haven't grasped them. It was a great conversation. So let's get into it right now.
Walk with me, talk with me. What you know about God? Will He ride with me? Come and open my eyes for me. Hear my story. Show me more what's in store. And once more, listen, homie, can you walk?
Yep. All right, ladies, welcome to this Christian Walk podcast.
Hey.
We have a returning champion on the show here. First of all, Miss Alicia, formerly known as Pastor T. I'm still trying to get. I want to get I'm gonna get another nickname going, but Mrs. Massey, Pastor Mrs. Massey. We're gonna get something together for you. But Alicia Massey is back on the show. Welcome,
Hey, y'all.
Alicia.
I'm glad to be back. Thank you, Marlon.
No problem. And we have a first timer on the show, Miss Alarrica Parks. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here and being a part of this conversation. Now, anybody who doesn't see the show before know that I always like to welcome people to the conversation, right? But I'm especially tickled pink about this conversation because this one actually happened as a result of a conversation that you and I had back in last October, Alarrica. We was at a friend's house at a gathering and we're just having conversations about faith. And, I like that. I love that because I feel like conversation for faith should not just be restricted to church or Bible studies. We should have them wherever we are, because wherever we are, we're taking God with us, whether we believe it or not, right? But this conversation was very dear to my heart because you had told me about shared your experience about a situation that I pretty much mirrored for many years, right? Because the truth is, it's so many people going to church right now, and they're not really sure what it is that they're going to church for. Right. Sometimes we're going because it's just the thing to do. It's, we knew that when we were kids, when we was laying in that bed on Sunday, we all of a sudden that light came on, that door flew open, and Big Mama or Granny or Auntie Barbara, whoever, somebody was like, all right, it's Sunday, we going to church. That's what we do. We was
Right.
used to going to church because that's what we do. And I was always one of those people like, I gotta go to church. I gotta go to church. And I was like that my whole life from as long as I could remember. But it wasn't until I was good and in my 30s before I realized that it wasn't about the ritual of going to church. It was about the relationship that I should be developing with God. And I think that not everybody gets that, but
Right.
it's not something that people should be ashamed of. It's just the fact that we weren't really taught that. You know what I mean? And I want to kind of go into that because I think we all have, if we haven't experienced it ourselves, we at least know someone who has had that shared experience of just going to church for the ritual of it, but never really gaining that relationship with God. And then,
Right.
you know, and to me, that's what it's about.
Right.
And that can change your experience, not only your experience at church, but it can also change your entire life when you get that. You know what I mean? So let's once talk about what it's like. You know, I kind of share my experience being young, just getting, you know, taken to church by my dad, taken to church by my granny, and just going and sitting there and liking the songs, even sometimes hearing something that was catchy as far as in the word. And, you
Right.
know, sometimes when the scripture was happening, I kind of got, you know, okay, I get that. Love your neighbor, all of that, blah, 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 whatever this situation, that sounds like the right thing to do. So let's roll with that. But was it really penetrating my heart? Can't say that it was, you know, but just to kind of recap the conversation that you and I had, Alarrica, let's talk about your experience with church. First of all, did you grow up in church or how was that?
So my experience with going to church as a child was my mom putting me on the school bus, the church school bus every Sunday, right? So she didn't take us, she didn't go with us. I think for her, sadly and unfortunately, was just a avenue to get us out of the house on Sunday mornings, right? So we better be dressed and ready to go when that church bus pulled up in the little projects to pick all the little kids up to take them to Sunday school, right? So for me, that was, and I think I was probably as early as third, fourth, fifth grade, right? I was young, right? And so for me, that was my time to get away and go play with friends, right? That was my playtime. So to your point, I wasn't absorbing what was being taught. I learned the songs or whatnot, growing up, and, I sung them in Sunday school. I learned them or whatnot, but really it was just something to do on Sundays, right? And then during the summers, as I got older, vacation Bible school. I remember, it lasts a week every summer. Again, it was just another avenue to get the kids out the house. I'm just going to go play, right? So I never really listened to learn what was being taught, because it wasn't delivered at home. It wasn't taught for me to do that. There was no one in my home that was going to church. There was no one in my house talking about God and Christianity, none of that, right? So then as I got older, I just stopped. I just stopped going as I became older as a child. And I will tell you, because I've been thinking about my path since you've asked me to be a guest on your show. I remember when I did pick back up going to church. Again, remember, I don't know the foundation of, I don't know the fundamentals of it. I don't, even at 46 years old, even, going to church every Sunday when I was married. And when I first moved to Charlotte, I had 2 small children. I was just going through some things. But church music is what I feel. That's how I connect with God, is through the music. So when I first moved here, I was going to John P. Key's church. And if he had a bad choir, right?
Yeah, that's mostly music, boy. That's music. If you're looking for it, that's where you will find it.
Listen, so I was going faithfully every Sunday when I first moved to Charlotte 20 years ago or whatnot. And then somehow I just got away from it. I don't know what happened, probably work or something. And then maybe 6 years, maybe after that, I got married. My ex-husband, he grew up in the church, right? So he grew up in the church. So he was going to church every Sunday. So that's, that's what I did because my husband was going to church every Sunday. So we got all the kids together and we went to church. But again, I still wasn't, I was confused. I was sitting in church like, okay, what does that mean? What are they talking about? Okay, now who is this character? And unfortunately, he didn't make me feel comfortable about it. Right.
So what you mean by that? He didn't make you feel comfortable?
So like I'd ask questions and they would just come off as silly questions, or you don't know that. How do you not know that? Because I don't know. Right. I just don't. Right. So he didn't make me feel comfortable about it. And so then, of course, I lost interest in it. Like I just didn't want to go anymore. So I stopped going. Right. So, again, at 46, I still don't know. And so I will tell you, and it has been a while since I've been to church, but for a while, whenever I feel like I'm going through something, or I just feel overwhelmed and I feel like I need to be in a church, then I would say, you know what, because I've been working on Sundays for years now. I'm taking off on this Sunday and I'm going to church, right? Because I just felt like I needed it in my soul. And it wasn't for the message necessarily, it was just for the music. It was for the songs.
For being in that atmosphere. Yeah. Because, even before I had really got into relationship, how you can just kind of gauge that your week feel better. Like your week feel like it go a little bit better when you go to church versus when it doesn't.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like we'd get in there and be like, well, I know what happened. I didn't go to church. But, it's a lot of people that's going every week and their life is in shambles.
Right.
Right. Because sooner or later that wear off.
Yeah.
That wear off. But you made a great point, Alarrica, when you said, that he would kind of shame you. You know what I'm saying? Because that's what it is. It's like people will shame you when you're not on the same level as them. They assume that you're supposed to already know. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's a big mistake that's happening in the church. It's not a whole lot of, okay, when they invite you to join and be a part, they don't try to find out where you are. It's kind of like playing this game of double dutch. You just kind of get in and then it's context clues. Like, okay, well, I know Christmas, Christ. All right. I see the little Virgin Mary up there. Okay. I know this Jesus' birthday. Okay. I'm getting it. It's like it's only so much stuff you can get that way though. You know what I mean? And that's why it's going to be limited. But I think that is a crucial point, because why is that the case? Why are they not giving us the fundamentals every time when we start?
Can I tell you this too? Because and Alicia, you may remember, because before you get married, you have to go to marriage counseling or whatnot. And I used to complain to Alicia about it all the time. But the pastor that was marrying us, she was a woman, right? And so she knew that I didn't grow up in the church. And she's another one that just made me feel so ashamed. And so she would ask him or tell us that we're not equally yoked, or she didn't believe that I deserved to be married because I had children out of wedlock, right? So she's already putting this horrible taste in my mouth. It's for one, her marrying us, right? Like, I don't want her to marry us if she doesn't believe I should be married. And it got so bad, Marley, that because we kept bumping heads, we agreed that we would stop going to our counseling sessions with her, but she still agreed to marry us. It was bad. It just seemed like every time we met with her, she just made me feel so horrible. She just made me feel like I was just going straight to hell in a handbasket. Every time we met with her, it's bad. Yeah. So it's
never did she try to help you in the situation though.
Right. So it's things like that. Just, I never really wanted to embrace it, just because I just kept getting a bad taste in my mouth coming from other people. Right.
And that's it. And you know what? To be real about it, church folks will do it every time. Right. And it's a real bad stigma around church folks, but I try not to, I don't run from the topic of it because it's real. right?
Right.
And I feel like people that are in church need to get a wake-up call about the condemnation, the shame that they be toting around, the judgment that they will just kind of project on people, because that's not what God is about. And
Right.
when the people that claim to know him and be so Bible educated, they should know that, and
Right.
know that that's not what his purpose is. And I hate the fact that, and I'm gonna use the H word, hate the fact that, so many people get ran away from God and ran away from church because God is misrepresented by people. And so I apologize. I want to apologize that was your experience, first of all, on behalf of the kingdom.
Okay.
I feel like that we need to do that. We need to acknowledge that people's hurt is real, and that the fact that their feelings got hurt is valid. So I definitely want to do that officially. And let's rebuild. But Alicia, now come on now,
Yeah.
as a pastor. Right, I know that you have encountered people at all different levels of faith, right? And I just want to know what you feel about this, this situation in general now, about those people that, about Alicia's, excuse me, about Alarrica's situation. She's not the only one that had it. So many people come in and they are at different levels of faith, but
Right.
it's not really nothing in place a lot of the times that can address that. Have you seen that, this issue in church as a leader?
Oh yeah, definitely. And let me also just say, like, I'm no stranger to church hurt either. So, I've experienced it. I've felt like, I was falling short, like I didn't understand. And listen, I grew up in church. Like, I grew up in the Baptist church. We went to the Baptist church for a little while. Then my grandma found Church of God in Christ. So my mom and my aunts, we all went to the Church of God in Christ. My grandmother was the church mother, so you know how that goes. Um, Growing up in the Church of God in Christ, you was on the choir, you was singing, you was reading the scriptures, you was doing the announcements, you was in all the plays, you was going to Bible study. And let me just throw in there, my mom was Christ,
Alicia.
and my
Okay,
dad was did I freeze up?
he was
My
freezing up a
dad
little
was
bit. Go ahead.
my dad was Jehovah's Witness. So listen, I was I was in everything. We was going to church on Sundays and Bible study with my mom, and then to the Kingdom Hall with my dad. So yeah, I got all of that. And then once I got older, um, I was introduced to a non-denominational church. And that's when I made the decision as an adult that I want to try this. And when you grow up, especially in a denominational church, they don't encourage you to go to non-denominational. It's like, well, why do you want to do that? And are you sure? And and I remember having that conversation with my pastor, like, this is what I've decided to do. And it was just like, that wasn't the right decision that I should be making. But the number one reason that I felt in my heart that I should make that decision was because I knew there was a calling in my life, and I knew there was like more that God wanted from me. And I knew I was not going to get that in the like I knew I was going to be limited in the Church of God in Christ. And so that's when I made the decision to join a non-denominational church. And so I think like that was kind of my first experience with church hurt. And it was just kind of like, okay, well, it wasn't like very encouraged, it was frowned upon, and it was like, okay, well, am I really making the right decision? So even still going into my new adulthood, religion and spirituality, it was almost like I had to find God all over again, because I'm an adult woman now. I'm not this little girl anymore who I have to do these things. Like, these are things that I choose to do, like, because this is what I want to do. But definitely, church hurt is real, right? unfortunately, everyone in the church may not be saved for real.
That part right there. That part right. Say it again for the people in the back.
Everyone in the church may not be saved for real. Everyone in the church also they're on different levels of their own spiritual walk and their own spiritual growth. And there are issues that in themselves, they're not proud of. So, you have that projection that comes out when I'm not happy what's going on with me, but I see someone who's trying, then I project that, which causes rejection, right? And my advice to anyone, and always has been, if you encounter a member of the church who has a bad attitude or distorted view of your walk or how you're walking with God and how you're going about doing that, but you have not directly come in contact with the leadership, ignore that person and get to the leadership. Because at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you're under a covering of leaders that is going to guide you. The leaders can't really do anything about all the people in the church. Their goal is to help them grow and different things like that. But now if you're getting that from leadership, kind of like what you talked about, Alarrica, with the pastor and things like that, okay, well then that's when you got to make a decision as to, is this the leader for me? And if it's not, you keep going until you find a leader that is going to protect you as you grow closer in God. I don't think it's something that we should stop, because reality is we get hurt in all aspects of our life, right? We get hurt on our jobs, we get hurt in our professional lives and our personal lives, but it doesn't. Me get hurt on my job is not going to stop me from making money. I'm still gonna go to work, or I'm gonna find a job where I'm gonna get a check. If I need to get out of the environment, I'm gonna get out of the environment, but I'm gonna find me another job, because I'm not gonna let that stop me. And I think the same is true with church hurt, right? We can't let one person or whoever stop us from getting that foundation, that relationship with Christ, and getting that relationship with God, because that's what the enemy wants to do.
Right.
When he knows you are getting 2 steps ahead of him, his job is to pull you 10 steps back. And if he knows what's in you, okay, well, I'm going to push this button. Listen, he's going to send the right person on the right day with the right attitude that will penetrate something in your spirit to make you say, this is not for me. And even once you step back a week or 2 weeks, he's like, all right, I already got this now. Because that's his job. We always have to remember that there is an adversary on the cross, right? We have to remember that he does not want us to get closer to Christ. He does not want us to walk in ourselves. He does not want us to walk in our calling. He doesn't want us to grow. He wants us to continue to live in the burden of our sin or our rejection or the hurt. That's where he wants to keep us. But that's where we have to prove, okay, you know what, devil, you are a liar. I'm going to have to find this may not be it. But again, I go back to, if it's not the leadership, don't blame the leadership. Go to the leader. Go to the leader and look, I'm new here. This is my second time visiting your church, and this was an experience that I had. I just want you to know, and get in contact with that leader. If they have a ministerial staff team, find somebody in leadership so that you can understand the direction and the vision of the church. And don't just run away from it. Sometimes you're going to have to press beyond what the enemy is throwing at you, because he's going to throw some things at you.
And that's just it. The moment we make the decision to try to get closer to God, that is sending off beacons to the enemy, and he is going to come in and try to impede that. Like, that is just something, and even outside of church, it seems like every time you try to do right, whether it's dieting, whether you doing whatever, it's like everything come up. It's like everybody's birthday this week, because you know what I'm saying? Like, it's a cake every day at work now that I'm trying to, and it's the same thing. That's the same thing when you're trying to get closer to God. The devil, he can't stand it. because he
Exactly.
wants you lost. He wants you away from God, because he
Exactly.
know that if the closer you get in there, that it's going to change you. It's going to get you closer to him, and he don't want that. He despises anything to do with you having a relationship with God. And we have to be real about, just like it's important to know who God is, it's important to know who the devil is. He, you know what I'm saying? It's important to know both, you know. And the greatest point ever, Alicia, was, it may not be, it's okay if that first church isn't it.
That's
You
right.
know, if you run into, because you will run into one where you'll be like, okay, this leader is not it, right? Even when you get there and the leader is not it, that don't mean that it's God. You know what I'm saying? It just
Exactly.
means that it's that church. That's not the church for you. And
Exactly.
so, you know, don't just give up that as soon as you go on one church and it's all whatever, you know, whether it's crooked, whether it's just you just not getting fed there, or it's a lot of people just sitting in churches. Not that anybody is bad, but they're not growing. You know,
Exactly.
you should be growing. Just like when, and you know how it is in corporate America, when we're in corporate America, we should be growing. If I'm at a
Exactly.
job, I should be developing somewhere or another. And if I'm not, sooner or later, I'm gonna feel that. And the same thing can happen in the church. Because really, I tell people all the time, the number one promoter of self-development is God. And so he wants us to not only go to church, he wants us to grow in the word, grow in the spirit, grow in, you know, in our relationship with him, you know.
Exactly.
And so if you're not getting it at that one place, we gonna just keep shopping around until we find one that
Exactly.
is worthwhile, and you will know it. You know what I'm saying? How you know it? That, I mean, because I know, like, I went and shopped around for churches when I moved from Detroit, right? I shopped around for churches probably maybe 5-6 years, because I was just used to going, but I never had one that was like, okay, I should I should join here. Like, I had a couple that I went back to, but it was nothing nothing said, okay, you need to join. But the church that I'm in now, the very first day I went, I knew that I was supposed to be there. And it's like, it's something you feel, it's something you know. Just like when you house shopping and you
Right.
know which house is supposed to be yours because you can feel it. You know, like, this is my house. It's the same thing when you pick in the church. You be like, this is my church. You know what I'm saying?
So when you were church shopping,
Mhm.
did you know what you were shopping for? Was it something in particular you were looking for, or you just go in there and if you feel it, if it moves you, then that's it?
That's a great question. And to me, I feel like, and you know, you can answer this too, Alicia, so get ready. Because for me, I just, I felt it. I felt like I felt the word speaking to me. You know, the singing was good. That was great. But I don't have great singing before and still not join the church. So it's like something that, you know, it wasn't just the singing that had me crying up at the altar before I knew it. It was just like, you know, it's something that draws you in and say, okay, this is my place. This is where I'm supposed to be. This is where God wants me to be. And it's so funny because, like, my pastor is from Ohio, right? So I, you know, he was not there the first day I joined. The first lady was the one who preached the word that day. And I remember when I left out of it, I was like, I joined that church after after 5-6 years of looking now, and joined that church the first day, and I hadn't even heard the pastor speak, but I knew that I was supposed to be there. And then the next week I went back and my pastor was there, and I was like, okay, he the bomb too. And then I've been there for like 13 years, you know, 13 years. So you can speak to that, Alicia. How did you know which church, you know, was supposed to be at? How did you pick your church?
Well, mine, going back to my story, was because it was, and let me tell you how I got introduced in church first, right? So there was a lady I was working with at the time, and she was actually working on a sermon, and so she had asked me a question. She was like, you know, hey Alicia, can you read this, whatever? So I read it, and I was like, giving her some, like, I would word it like this. I didn't know what she was doing at the time. And so I was like, what you working on? What is this for? I was like, paper, whatever. So she was like, no, it's a sermon. And I was like, oh, you finna preach it? Like, you preach, you a minister, whatever. And she was like, yeah. And so now again, you got to remember, I'm Kojic. So I'm like, well, you preaching or you teaching? Because in Kojic, women don't preach, they teach. You don't preach the message, you teach the message.
Okay.
And I kind of think they have evolved a little bit now to where they do have women pastors and women in the pulpit, but this was, 20 years ago. But so she's telling me what she's doing. I was like, well, what church you go to? And so she actually invited me to hear her preach on that Sunday. And so I went, and I was, kind of like, all right, now, because again, I'm like dibbling and dabbling, because this ain't my church. I still belong to the Church of God in Christ. I'm like,
You
all
stepping
right.
out.
I'm stepping out. You know what I'm saying? I'm stepping out a little bit, because I wasn't looking for another church. It wasn't like I got to go find another church. This just it fell into my lap, really. So I go in, and she's preaching or whatever. And so then afterwards, she was like, well, let me, introduce you to some people. So she introduced me to the first lady, the pastor, and she started introducing me to some other ladies. And it's like, yeah, we're all ministers. And I was like, what? Y'all all ministers?
I found my tribe.
Like, what? So how does that work? You know what I'm saying? And because this is something that is being introduced to something different and something new. So I was like, all right. So I go back to my church, and I'm like, all right. So at my church, I did the announcements, because I told you we're doing everything. So I did the announcement, and I remember that Sunday at doing the announcement, it was this guy that came in. He just like walked in, and I remember God just like showing me stuff about him, and I just had like this urge to speak to it or whatever. So I'm like, I'm up here with this microphone, and I'm supposed to be doing these announcements, but I got this, urge. And I'm like, so I was like, so I started prophesying to this man. And after it was over, I remember the first lady afterwards, she came up to me. She was like, yeah, she said something like you were evangelizing or something. Now, don't get me wrong. Nothing wrong with evangelizing, because we're all called to evangelize. But at that moment, I said, wait a minute. It's more. It was like I knew there was something more in me than what she was saying. And it was almost like I could feel like this box already kind of forming, right? Now, I've already had this experience at this other church, and it's like, well, maybe I can get a little bit more growth. Kind of like you said, like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get growth and development here. So maybe this is where I need to go. Now, listen, I dibbled and dabbled for a couple of months before I knew that, okay, I need to make this journey. And the way they did new discipleship, what you didn't get called in front of the church. It wasn't like, they said, hey, if you want to join, come down now. It wasn't that type of deal. It was, if you want to join or learn more about us, they had new discipleship classes, like on the first Saturday of every month or something like that. And so I went to the class. So I ended up going to the class, and and I ended up joining. So then I had to go back, and I was like, well, hey, I kind of quit y'all. I joined this other church.
So would you give did you have to give like a 2-week notice? How did that go?
I mean, in all, like, looking back, I probably should have said, hey, I'm gonna do this, but I mean, it just happened. But I did let them know that I was gonna going to join another church and what my intentions were. So And that's what I did. I mean, and it was a hard decision for me because remember, like this is my home, like this is where my mother is, my aunts are, my grandmother, grandfather. Like this is a family oriented church. So like cousins and all that, so it was a hard, very tough decision for me to make, but I knew I had to step out um, and do something, different. And within 1 year of me being at that church, I was offered the opportunity to go and pastor a church in Durham. And
it's
so,
because you was obedient to the call, right?
because I was obedient, right? And had I have not listened and tapped into what God was doing on that Sunday in me, like I would have missed that opportunity.
Right.
So, I definitely don't think it was a mistake, but it was just kind of like you said, Mark, like there is just, and I know when people say that, it's like, well, how do you hear God? How do you know it's God? And I can't really explain it. It's like
very hard to explain.
It's right. It's like you just know. And because number one, you know that the enemy ain't calling me to go preach no. The enemy is not calling me to do anything kingdom related, right? So this gotta be God. Like, okay, this gotta be God. But a lot of times when you leave churches or you making decisions, leadership may say, oh, well, that's the devil, taking out. No, it's not always the devil. Sometimes you gotta continue to grow and go to another level. So my advice is like to anyone, like, you know what you're looking for. What are you looking for in the church home? Like, what are some spiritual needs that you have right now that you need your spiritual leaders to provide for you? If you don't have a church home, like, do some interviews, like go and see what are they offering. What are you teaching, to your flock? How is your flock growing? What are they doing? What are they offering? A lot of churches have a lot of different programs and things like that going on, but is that what you want? Is that what you're going to benefit from? So I think you have to know, like, you got to have some a plan on what it is that you're looking for, so that when you get to that place, that's what you need.
That's a great point, because a lot of times really saying, okay, what do I want from my church? Because we think about that with our potential mates, with our jobs, even, what kind of benefits do I want? And it's not so much, of course I want to build a relationship with God, but also I want a place to where they're going to teach me the fundamentals, right? And this is something you find out because they communicate it. I know, like in my church, we have new members classes, we have Bible institutes, we have, then it's like, for people that, when you first go in, before you can be, because like you have that time when you go down and you say, I want to be a member, right? But you're not a full-fledged member until you go to the membership classes, right? And that's what they would go in, and that was my first time experiencing that at the church that I'm at now. And it was like, this is how we pray, this is why we pray, if you've never prayed before. And I was just like, wow. And I remember thinking like, okay, well, I know how to pray. Who don't know how to pray? Anybody? But this was 14 years ago. And once again, I thought that I was on the money because I've been going to church. But I didn't appreciate the fact that they took time to show and to teach the fundamentals.
Exactly.
And it wasn't until later that I realized that I needed them. And it's like, that's another reason, another way where, like, okay, this is the place for me. And, you should shop around and go a few times. And now it's better because you don't even have to leave the privacy of your home right now to check the church out.
Exactly.
Let me know. I can start sending you the link, and so you can listen until you want to come in, whatever. And I don't want to turn this into a recruiting call, but just know that I know a place that you might like. I know a place that you might like, but I want shameless plugs aside,
Right.
that's the kind of stuff that you do want to know going in. And then even the stuff that, when you get past the spiritual part of it, right? It's churches that help us build at, professionally and personally. They giving life classes, they having exercise classes, they're having, financial health classes.
Mhm.
And if you want something like that, they have singles classes, they have, women's industry, women ministries, they have,
Mhm.
if that's the kind of stuff that you want, a place where I'm like, I want to be able to be involved. They do stuff in the community, they do, what is it that I want from my church? I don't think
Right.
we think about that. And
Yeah.
that was a great point. We should think about that before we go around waiting for a church to wow us. It's like, all right,
Um,
pastor, do it. Like
mhm.
And go.
you are on the clock and the game
Right.
about to come on. So now, not only
And
do I
do it.
need you
Go ahead,
to,
Pastor. Do it.
I need you to do it and do it
And
timely. Now,
quickly, by one
right.
o'clock. Get it
Can we
together.
do this by 1 o'clock? Because if not, that is going to be a mark
But
against
listen,
you.
there are churches who start early in the morning because they are football fanatics and
Yeah.
they want to be out. And
Yeah.
listen, they get in and they out. They can
Yeah.
watch their football. There
That's
ain't
what I'm
nothing wrong with that. If that's what you need, go find you the church. You start at 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning. So you be
Right.
out by 10:30. Guess what? You even beat the lunch crowds if you want to go get you a buffet meal or something. And while you out, everybody else is just getting started on their church journey.
saying. Do you know? Do you know? And that's the kind of, and that's what I'm talking about. We need to just realize what it is that we want.
Mhm.
Right. But we want to get out of it.
Right.
Yes.
It's
And
a
it's
church right
okay.
down the street from me. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut
Oh
you
no, go
off,
ahead.
but it's a church right down the street from me, and it's a bikers church. And so it's like every Sunday when you go by, like all you see is all the like Harley Davidsons and stuff. But I mean, but they, they're bikers and they go to church. I mean, it's like whatever you need.
I like it.
And I'm like, oh, I think I just want to go in there and see what it's like. But it's I forgot what the name of it is, but I know it has Bikers Church on the plaque
Oh,
outside or whatever. But I'm like, and they ride their bikes to church on Sunday. And when it's warm outside, they be out there doing their little picnics and drive-bys or whatever, for the community. I'm like, that's hey, but look, they all in
some,
there thriving in the Lord. I'm like, that's all
Right.
right.
yeah.
Yes.
Whatever you go find it.
Yes.
Right.
Burn rubbers, not souls. That's what I'm talking about. Do it
Right.
for Jesus.
Do it for the Lord. I'm living for the Lord.
Do it for Jesus. That's what I'm talking about. In all things, acknowledge him. You know what I'm
Right.
talking about?
Exactly.
That is
Exactly.
it. That is it. So I'm like this with it, right? Because I know it's so many people at different levels of faith, and this is just a call to them. Don't be ashamed of whatever level of faith you in, because it's people that have been
Right.
going to church 60, 70 years, and they just in it for the ritual of it.
Right.
You know,
Yeah. 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 Because
and
it's the
it's
thing trendy.
yeah. And then it's
Yep.
just something we just used to doing.
Right.
And then it's some people that just never really get the fundamentals of grace. They think that they got to work their
Mhm.
way into heaven, and they up in there trying to say, well, if I do this, I'll get this from God. And they
Mhm.
missing the whole thing. You know what I'm saying? They missing the
Mhm.
whole thing. And when you get into a Bible-based church that's telling you, and one thing I can say about when I in my church now, like I grew up loving God for what he could do, but my life changed for the better when I learned how to love God for who he is.
Right.
And when the more I got to know him, the more he showed me how to love me, and
Mm,
and who I was and who I
right.
was meant to be. And that's when it's a game changer.
Right. Wow.
Yeah. And I like how, you know, you kind of talked about, you know, the term for it is legalistic, right? So you're only working or serving God because of what he can. It's like, if I do this, then he'll do that. And I can relate to that because look, I was a minister operating under a legalistic umbrella. And when God showed me that, I remember I was preparing a sermon, and God showed me like you're operating under law, you're not operating under grace, you know, and you know, I had to repent. And I was just like, wow. But it was birthed out of fear. It was also birthed out of my own like journeys, and you know, it was a lot of things that happened to me personally. Like my divorce was one of them things. It was I remember when my grandmother passed away, and my grandmother passed away when I was 12 years old. Now, by the time God is revealing all this stuff to me, I'm in my 30s. So this is like how long I had been like feeling like, well, God took my grandmother away from me. God took my grandpa. God took my marriage. God did this. God did that. And so I just felt like the more I worked harder and the more I did for him, like, okay, well, he'll stop taking stuff and he'll stop taking people away from me if I just work hard. And when he showed me, like, you're doing all of this, like, these things didn't happen as I wasn't punishing you for this. You know, these things didn't happen because you did something wrong. You know, you didn't have anything to do with that. And I was just like, wow. So I'm functioning under a legalistic term. Like, okay, well, God, let me check that. And just like you said, Marley, when that got delivered from that, it was a totally different perspective of myself that I had. It was a totally different perspective of me. It was a totally different perspective of how I viewed my calling, how I was able to minister to, like, just being able to minister to people in a different perspective under the anointing of grace and not the legalistic term, right? So it was so different. It was just a different journey than I had ever experienced. And I mean, and just to be under that for so long and not even know it, it was, you know, when God showed me that, I was like, I don't never want to go back.
Exactly. It is a game changer. It is definitely a game changer.
And this all happened before the pandemic started. I'm glad it did, because with everything that happened during the pandemic and all the funerals and stuff I went to, honey, I don't know where I'd be right now if God hadn't shown me that. Honestly, I don't know.
Wow.
But so I'm glad that it happened when it did. But I think that is definitely important for anybody to know in their spiritual journey is you got to check to make sure, like, what are your intentions? Why are you doing what you're doing? Why are you serving? Why do you want to serve? And like you said, Marley, it's like, just, we serve God because of who he is. We serve God because of what he has done for us. Like, I know God, I know he's going to do great things in our lives because he's already done that. He's already proved that.
Right.
He doesn't have to prove anything else, but I know that he will. I know that he will continue to do it. So it's just like, God, you're going to show up. So let me show up, because you're going to meet me in whatever it is that I'm doing. So
It's like you go and you find out that he's been there all the time.
All the time. The whole time.
He's never left. He just been, it's like we feel like we waiting on him, but he's really just waiting on us.
Waiting on us. He is.
He is
And
waiting on
even
us.
even in the waiting, there is still grace.
Grace.
Believe that.
Amazing grace.
I believe that.
Right. It's even in the waiting, it's still grace. And it's just like, okay, God, I know that something different should have happened because of this, but I know you covered me from that.
That part. And when you go back, and this is for you, Alarrica, and for anybody out there listening who feel like, okay, I want to try it again. I want to, I'm gonna give this thing another try, right? Mm-hmm. Don't go in ashamed of wherever you are, because wherever you are is where God needs you to be, right?
Right.
And God can work, he can work it as if you never lost any time, right? That's the
Right.
beauty of him, right? He lives outside of time. So time is
Mm-hmm.
something that we're restricted to, not him. So any time that you lost, he can make it like it never happened. So that's the beauty of him. So just go in knowing that you want to get closer to him. That's it. And
Right.
I want to forewarn you, it will be people that will still get on your nerves in church, but pray for them and don't
So,
let them deter you.
right.
Don't let people deter you, because people have a bad day, people be in a bad space, and people be in a bad season,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And so we just have to be that change we want to see in the world, right? Curtis told us that all the time, right? I believe that. And that is so true in everything, right? He used to tell us that all the time. And being the change that you want to see, it takes strength. And more than anything, it takes God.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
So definitely lean on that. So I thank you ladies for coming on here and having this conversation. This I feel was needed, So how do you feel about it now, Alarrica?
I like the conversation. I learned a lot, right? Just in this little bit of time, I learned a lot. And so the wheels are turning, right? So there's some things I'm going to think on. But it was a conversation that needed to be had, right? And that when you reached out, it was like, you ready to be on the show? I was like, I don't know. And even after I agreed, I was like, I don't think I want to do this. I was like, but that was just out of fear, right? And not really just being uncomfortable with having a conversation, because I've never had the conversation until tonight, right? Outside, not this deep, right? Because Marley, when you and I talked a couple months back, that was what, a 5-minute conversation,
maybe about 7 minutes,
right? Tops, right?
But it said in my spirit all this time.
Clearly, I see.
I knew we had to go deeper, so I'm glad that you did not let the fear talk you out of it.
Right. So no, I'm glad that we had the conversation. I appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem. Pastor T, thank you so much for being here. I know I can't say Pastor T no more, but I still like saying it. Mrs.
Pastor T, it's fine.
And I to Alicia a couple of times. I did. And I that was and I was sitting here, I was thinking, I was like, okay, when was the last time I've been in church? And it was actually probably about 4 years ago. So it hasn't been,
Alarrica, look, she used to come hear me preach. When I would invite her, she would come and she would.
Yep, I sure did. I was never afraid of hearing the word, right? I went because some Sundays I would go to church, I'd be like, you know what? I'm glad I came today, because that message was for me. Like, I needed to be. There's plenty of times I felt that way. I'm so glad I got out the bed and came to church, because that message was for me, right?
Yeah.
So, it's not anything that I shy away from. Like I said, whenever I just feel it, not since the pandemic, but when I just felt it in my spirit that I needed to be in the house, I would go, right? So, definitely it has not been off my radar, so I'm glad that we had this conversation. So
it definitely was needed for somebody, right? Somebody needs to hear it. Somebody is in that same place that you are right now, and luckily God opened an opportunity for you to share your story so that somebody else could be blessed. And I think that's the way we look at all of these opportunities, and God will reward you even for this, like, being willing. And that's what it's about. Like, Marlon, you talked about this in the beginning, like, we are the church. Like, the church is just a building, but the word tells us that the people, we are the ones, and we go out and we spread the gospel. And this is a form of doing that, this is a form of bringing somebody to Christ who is dealing with church hurt or dealing with rejection. How do I get back into it? what fundamentals do I need? And they'll run across this podcast and be like, well, dang, that's it. Like, golly, let me rewind that and keep on listening and listen. And if you're looking and you can reach out to me, reach out to Marley. I love helping people.
We will definitely get you connected to a church home wherever you are.
Because I don't want anybody out there feeling like God is not for them, because that's not the God.
We all need the same grace.
Yeah.
And don't ever let nobody tell you different. And don't ever let nobody shame you because they sin differently than you.
Exactly.
Ooh, that part.
People will come for you because they sin differently, but we all sin. We all
fall
short.
Sin is sin. That you know,
there's no levels to it.
That's right. There's no sin is sin. Like we are the ones that categorize sin. We are the one that says, oh, well, you do this, but I don't do that. Under God's umbrella.
It's all filthy rags.
It's all the same thing. Like we gotta get past it. I don't care if you had 100 kids out of wedlock, and Sister Susie, she's been married, since she was 12. I don't care. That doesn't matter. But in that marriage, what you've been doing, and the fact that you shaming me for my journey.
Yep.
And we gotta stop.
Got to stop. Church folks, you have been warned. Your time is up. Your time is up, church folks. Now,
I don't think that, to be honest with you, I really feel like there will always be people in church that won't get it.
Right. Yeah.
There will always be people in church that will not get it. But what we have to do is just pray that even, with those ones who just won't get it, is that at least the leadership is in place to help us get there. Because even though you're going to church, you're not meeting people at their best. Like, everybody in the church is not one, like, nobody has arrived. And that's from the pulpit all the way back to the parking lot. Nobody is at their best. Everybody is still growing and searching and seeking God and, trying to be better. So nobody's at their best. So
right. Just because they're in their Sunday's best clothes, don't mean that they're in their best as as a person. And in this journey of life. And that's for real.
Right.
Amen.
Well, thank you so much, ladies, for being here and being a part of the conversation. And we're gonna have you back on here now, Alarrica. You done got your feet wet now. But I'm gonna send you some links. I'm telling you, if nothing else, Pastor Michael Todd, Grace Like a Flood, that series, oh man, that was a game changer. Anybody out there who want to just hear some fundamentals and want to hear from a charismatic person he is a Bible-based person. Don't let Spitgate 2022 detour you, okay? The word is in that church, okay? So don't let that happen. I don't want to hear that, so please don't comment about that because we don't care about that. But what we care about is that the word is coming through him and he knows how to break that word down.
Damn.
And that's what he breaks that word down. Alarrica, I'm gonna send you that series. I promise you. And to anybody else, go on YouTube, search for Grace Like a Flood, Pastor Michael Todd. That series will give you the fundamentals you need on this walk with God. I guarantee you. All right. So thank you, ladies, so much for being here. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you so much to my guests, Alicia and Alarrica. I appreciate you joining the conversation and being so transparent with your experience around gauging and gaining the fundamentals of faith. If this conversation spoke to you, please like it, please share it, and definitely please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Remember, you can still listen to us on Apple Music Podcasts as well as iHeart Radio if you don't have time to look on YouTube. So today's conversation really was near and dear to my heart. I know what it's like to think that you have it figured out and then have that revelation of, I really have a lot more to learn when it comes to this relationship thing, when it comes to God. And, I remember having that time where I felt like, dang, I feel bad because I've been going to church so many years and I should have it. But I'm glad that I let all of that go and just understood it was okay wherever level I was at. And as long as I was willing to build from it, then I knew that God could make sure that it was like I missed no time at all. And so when I got that concept, it was a game changer for me. And so I'm hoping that if you're looking at this at whatever level you're at, that you feel that, okay, I'm at this level, but I want to go to another level. And I can do that as long as I'm clear and true to myself about what level I'm on now. And for those people that feel like that they have so much information or they have so much Bible knowledge, that's not a green light for you to shake your finger at somebody else. If you have the knowledge, share it. Don't feel like you have the power to shun somebody because you don't. Because at the end of the day, it's not about law. It is about grace. The same grace that we all need. Okay? Jesus came because we all needed it. Not some people. Or not people who were at different levels. We all need it. So, be on notice. Nobody's better than nobody. We all in this walk trying to get what God has for us. And we don't need to be judgmental, condemning, or shunning anybody. Okay? So take that with you. I appreciate it. Now, speaking of this walk with God, I know one thing for sure. Loving God can be easy. Trusting God can be hard. But I believe we can all get there one step at a time on this Christian walk. I'll see you next time.
Walk with me, talk with me. What you know about God? Will He ride with me? Come and open my eyes for me. Hear my story. Show me more what's in store. And once more, listen, homie, can you walk with me? Talk with me. What you know about God? Will He ride with me? Come and open my eyes for me. Hear my story. Show me more what's in store. And once more, listen, homie, can you walk? Can you walk? Let's walk.